Welcome back to the Prepare Like a Pro podcast. This week on the show, we have Loris Bertolacci, strength and conditioning coach at the Shanghai Sports Institute. Loris has coached across 4 decades with multiple AFL clubs, Olympic-level athletes and squads, including the Australian women's volleyball team. Before we start episode 34, the Prepare Like a Pro podcast mission is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing. We are on YouTube, iTunes and Spotify. For those that are jumping on, guys, feel free to send your questions through to Loris. I'm just going to invite him to join me live. Bear with me. He's all the way over in China at the moment. This may take a little bit longer than normal. Just sending the invitation over. And here he is. There you go, mate.
Yep, hopefully you can hear me from China.
Loud and clear. So you're in the gym. I'm in the gym as well, actually. Has just finished your session?
Yeah, they did a velodrome session and I had to do some video taping of it. So, yeah, I've just come down from the velodrome into the gym.
Nice. We'll get cracking straight into it, mate. Take us back to the beginning. When did you discover a passion and elite sport and strength and conditioning was going to be your career path?
Well, I'm a bit of a geriatric. I think in the mid-70s I was in an athletic club, Preston Athletics Club, and I was always helping athletes with programs. And, yeah, I had a bit of an inkling that might be where I headed. But, yeah, in reality, it was after I retired in 1982 that I took up sprint coaching. Yeah, just went for it from there, really. Yeah.
Okay, so sprint coaching, so at what level were you working with at the start of your career?
No. I had a pretty good group. This is probably 1982. I had an elite runner, a 10-4 runner at that time, 10-3, 10-3-8. I had a few people under 11 and pretty good squad. So I did that I started AFL, which was a great learning curve for me. It was a fantastic experience. I made a lot of mistakes, a heap of mistakes, because I came in sort of all power, all strength, all speed because of my throwing background. So, I made a few mistakes, but I certainly learned heaps and obviously learned on the job. I was training sprinters and they were running in state titles and national titles and professional races and stuff like that. So that was a fantastic learning curve, yeah. How
did you start in AFL? Was there a connection within the club or did you interview for the role?
Oh, no, athletics is still the same. You just offer to coach, you do it for nothing. I did it for nothing for probably 3 years. And you probably wouldn't do it now. So it was like 5-6 days a week going there, reading up everything I could. And obviously I've been a track and field athlete anyway. But yeah, I did it for nothing. Probably was a huge grounding for me to do it. And obviously working with athletes that were good enough to compete at national titles and getting to vote. So it was the real thing. It was pretty fast stuff. And it was the 80s, but still Metfield. My brother-in-law is in his 70s, but he's still coaching at the national level, at the international level, Gus, and doesn't get a cent for it. So track and field is different to, you'll find that a lot throughout track and field, which is really shocking, really, within Australia. But yeah, you just get a lot of people that do it for the love of it, and some of them are really good coaches. Yeah.
And so how do you make a living when you're doing that? Are you personal training or what?
Well, that was the 80s. I think it's a little bit different now. I don't think I could have done it now if I was the same age now. I really don't think that would be a reality, but it was sort of accepted then. So you just worked during the day and did different things. I worked in gyms and was selling Nike shoes and just doing different stuff, and then lobbing into the track from 5 till 7:30 at night and training people. So that's just the way it was. I think it was a good grounding for me because I never because I had a love for the sport, and even now I'll go beyond and above the call of duty because of passion, even though I'm earning money now. So I've never been one to do that, which is the big argument now in strength and conditioning. Should you be an intern? Should you do stuff for nothing? I just think you have to, really. Got to get dirty. You've got to train people, and disasters occurring in front of you, basically.
You transitioned from track and field, being a hammer thrower and working with sprinters to football. I know you made a few mistakes early days with that transition. I know you brought a fair bit of strength and power stuff to AFL. I imagine there would have been a lot of steady state running going on back then and potentially more bodybuilding type training.
Look, Yeah, look, it was 87 to 93. I was sort of basically the strength and conditioning guy at Essendon Football Club. I got the job. Look, Essendon was pretty good. They'd had Freddie Lehman before me as a strength coach, and he'd been an international sprinter. And people like the Bazanko boys were playing in the reserves, played a few senior games. They were. And there was always, yes, there was steady state running, but yeah, there was probably a lot of interval training, things like 10-300s, 10-200s. But I wasn't, at that stage, I wasn't driving the running training. Peter Powers was. And that started a little bit in 93 and then 94, where I became a head strength and conditioning coach. So I got the chance to sit back and digest it all over the 6 years. But certainly by 1990, I brought a friend of mine in, Oscar Kender, who'd been an international decathlete, and he became the sprint coach at Essendon. That was 1990. And we really were doing sprints and plyometrics and Olympic lifting then. And certainly the 93 team was born and bred through speed and power. Absolutely. It wasn't that we were doing different to now. In fact, we were probably doing more speed then than they are now, but we probably weren't doing all the rehab and pre-activation and individualised training and such and such. It was like sprint, run upstairs, do some bounding, do some plyometrics and train hard and get in the gym and squat and power clean. But yeah, we were doing glute hams then, but believe it or not, 1991, 92, 93, because I'd been to Europe, so people think all this stuff's new, but it's not really. A lot of the rehab and activation stuff's pretty new.
Were Essendon ahead of their time because of having track and field guys at the clubs, or were other clubs?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, 100% we were. Yeah. Well, it was interesting. Unfortunately, Matt Barber died recently. Matt was the strength and conditioning coach at the Eagles, and he was an elite sprint coach, and even when he died, he was still coaching at the highest level, sprinting. So he was at West Coast, I was at Essendon, and then Danny Corcoran came to Essendon in 91, I think, and so we had three track and field people, because Danny Corcoran's had a track and field background, and he became the manager, obviously, but he was the fitness advisor. We were doing it together, and Oscar. So we definitely, I think, were ahead of the curve, yeah, and then pretty much right through that whole 90s, and then even the transition from when I left to join in 99, it sort of kept that sort of focus, I think. Yeah, so we were very fast team. And in fact, I had speed lights. I bought the first speed lights in 95. So I've got all the data, accurate data. And yeah. So, I mean, I know how quick they were. And so we were doing the traditional 20-metre test that they do in the draft camp, and not pumping up my tyres, but I set that up because that was being done indoors. So, look, things like if you didn't do under 3 seconds, you were a donkey, basically. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody over 3 was deemed a bit slow. So
what were they?
You had people like Dustin Fletcher who were doing under 2.8, 2.75, which is why he played till he was 40. And Mickey Simons, who was a halfback flanker, he was doing under 2.8. Scotty Cummings, who was a full forward, he was 2.8. Power cleaning 125, 130. So that was. We had a speed culture there. It was a pretty good team. Think about it, 93, 95, 96, 98, yeah. So that whole era, the guys were, and then John obviously did the same thing. In fact, if anything, he probably did even more speed than I did. Yeah. So it was a strength power culture from about 1990.
And did it take you a while to get buy-in with that?
Yeah, I didn't get real buy-in from more from the players. Look, it was part-time. It was AFL 87, 88, but it was not real full-time. But significantly, there was a guy called David Whedon came to Essendon, and he became a big ally within the coaching setup, and he's pretty famous. He's done a lot of the skill acquisition stuff, and he really pushed with sheets that we've got to do comprehensive speed, power, strength training, blah, blah, blah. So that was really good. So we started probably a comprehensive speed, power, strength program in 91 and went basically crazy in 92 with it. We were just lifting as heavy as we could and bounding as hard as we could and sprinting as fast as we could. We won a premiership in 93, a super explosive team with young kids. But we were getting a little bit too much injury, I thought. That was probably 95, 96 where I look back, which then sort of I changed a little bit the way I did things at some point within that minis era. But I think West Coast and Essendon in that sort of era there were way ahead of the curve, really, in terms of strength power from other teams. And obviously the results show too. They dominated.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned the injuries, so you shifted some of your methods. what were some things that changed?
Yeah, it's the argument now, the performance enhancement argument versus injury prevention. So, I actually read something on LinkedIn now, what's really important is having players available. Well, that's quite obvious, right? And the data shows that. But you've always got this balance between you want to get them faster, fitter, stronger, but you don't want them to get injured, right? And certainly, even though in 95, 96, I was at Collingwood for a year, when I was at Collingwood, I got a lot of injury mid-year, and it really made me think about it. And then 95, 96, we still did really well at Essendon in terms of performance enhancement /
injuries
results. We were actually in semi-finals and preliminary finals, so the results were quite good. But I did feel there was a little bit too much injury, the pelvic area and all that sort of stuff. So basically, and I was saying this a while ago in another sort of talk, by 97, 96, I was starting to look at the Pilates area and Paul Check and core stability and injury prevention. And without going through a number of years and why, I went too far one way by 99 when I was at Geelong in my first year, like injury prevention. And then I just pulled it back a little bit in 2000, back to a nice balance between injury prevention and performance enhancement. But
yeah, what did you notice in 99? Like, was the cultural change of not working hard?
Well, I went to Geelong in 99.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I went to Geelong in 99. There were a lot of old players there. It was a transitional area. So we were recruiting that sort of super group of Geelong at Corey Enright. And we had a lot of guys like Barry. So I basically just went very conservative, very much screening, Pilates, yoga, individualised programs, fine-tuning, didn't do any heavy weights, anything really hard. It's actually really worked. We still did enough to be, but I just felt they weren't, the performance enhancement side of it wasn't there enough. So therefore, basically that was gone from one extreme to the other, and then I just realised you just got to sit in the middle all the time. You've got to find a happy medium and just individualise a program, which I don't think everybody still does properly. Some clubs I don't think do well now. I think some clubs possibly go down a course instead of just saying, well, I've got a group of 50 people here, they're all different, so it doesn't really matter what they do. If every player is doing a different program, it really doesn't matter. That's tough, especially now with the reduced staff levels in the AFL. It's going to make it harder to individualise programs. That's a challenge, yeah.
Absolutely. And did you have some strong influences to your career during these times, or were you sort of more self-taught and educated, reading books? How did you sort of develop yourself?
Look, I think I was telling somebody a while ago, I'm a different sort of history. I was lucky enough to train in Europe twice. And I was literally in the training camps where people like Bondarchuk and Peter Sheeny and all the greats of periodisation were. I was actually there on the ground with them and training. And that was the late 70s. And there was an explosion of strength and conditioning in the late 70s in Europe, but from the East German, Russia. It was pretty much everything that's done now was done there then, not the injury prevention side, the actual, depth jumping and altitude jumping and all that sort of stuff. So I was introduced to everything there by some, amazing coaches. I paid my own way there to sort of develop as an athlete, but obviously the influence that had. And then I suppose, I was self-taught, to be honest, in that sort of 80s era. Anything I could get my hands on, I'd read. Track and field technique in those days. You could buy journals from the States. Yes's Review, which was a Russian review, which was to be published they were pushing glute ham raises in 1986. But so I think that it's a bit of a balance, but look, I was a very big one. Once I got into AFL, I was a very big one for sourcing the best info I could. And I'd go to the AIS every year for 2 or 3 weeks at the end of the season and just talk to people and made a lot of connections throughout. I was just ask a lot of questions, a little bit of spying, a little bit of everything. So and a lot of my own sort of development from what I'd done in the past. Yeah. Yeah,
fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, mate. And you've worked with a lot of individual world-class athletes as well as successful teams winning premierships. Are there certain traits that you've noticed over your time that you start to notice, I reckon that kid's going somewhere when you see a younger developing athlete?
Oh, no doubt. Look, it's all individual because some people, again, we go back to programming, which is individualised, or should be individualised. Well, the same with emotional traits and motivational traits that athletes have. It's hard to sometimes pinpoint at 14, 15, 16. I am a big one, though, for waiting. The odd person that just smacks you in the face at 14, 15 and just amazing. But I do like to wait till 17, 18, 19 to really see how that person copes with life and all those other things. Because, a little bit sometimes, I mean, I'm just thinking now of 3 or 4 kids that I was training 10 years ago that were absolutely, to use a word, clamshell well and everything, but they never, I know them all and they all got to 18 and they wanted to go out and party and life changed for them. So it's a little bit difficult to sort of, I think you need to have that mass of people well educated up till about 16, 17, 18, and then you see who comes through. And I don't think there's any one trait. I mean, the obvious ones is they're disciplined. They're always disciplined. I think they're motivated. And some people have some unique traits that can't be X factors and stuff like that. Some people are just driven. And I think one of the things, actually I saw Bruce Connor jumped on. Hopefully he's still, g'day Bruce, how are you? My shoulder's still stuffed, Bruce.
Yeah, I know, good man.
Yeah. And one of the things that I did learn was was the supplementary list in the 90s, which was the rookie list now, right? And people like Adam, he's a coach now, and a plethora of guys like that. I think of a few other people, Berbakoff, people like that. You could just see when they got in at 18, they were in inverted commas average or deemed average, but they just had that drive that they said they were single-minded drive. They'd made a decision. We're going to make it. We've got an opportunity. We're going to make it, and I'm not going to stuff it up. And they would do everything in their power to get there. So I think it's pretty obvious what it needs. And then you need a bit of luck because a lot of people have got that. You need to be good at it. And then in team sports, somebody's got to like it too. A bit of another factor.
So be patient, like you said, and enjoy yourself in those earlier years rather than being too anal early on, and as well as making sure that you've got that drive and motivation. It's got to be intrinsic, doesn't it? Deep down, you really got to want it.
Well, yeah, and look, sometimes you can take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Sometimes it will take an athlete till they're 21 to 22 to I've been doing the training. I'm actually pretty good, but I've just got to go extra. It could be 21, 22, 23. So it does take time for some people because you've got the whole social side. And I mean, the thing that killed me as an athlete at 25, 26 was the whole social lifestyle thing. I just had a few problems as an athlete. So I was very privy to that myself. I was very sensitive to how people develop as people, because ultimately at some point you've got to deal with life too, and that's why that transition from 18 to 20 is really important, and some people just fall out even though they're talented. It's not only motivation, but they just stuff things up. And that's where you need somebody to help you, to guide you, which is not bad in an AFL club, obviously. That's why in an AFL club you might be a bit of a dipstick at 18, 19, 20, but somebody recognises you're talented, they keep you on the list, and then at 21, if you turn the corner and you don't go to jail or something like that, you make it. So it's multifactorial, yeah. But I think we call it too soon. We call it too soon with athletes. I think that's the problem with. I still think it's actually improving. I'm not privy to the changes, but with the TAC or whatever it is now, a lot of the good little boys get through. You're rough and tough, sort of possibly, for any one of a better word, social misfits. So if you're a good little private school boy, you've probably got a better chance of getting into AFL, or you're a good little boy because you interview well and you're nice. Well, there's no such thing as being nice in sport, really. You just want people. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty interesting area.
For sure. I think you've had Gary O'Donnell. Is he a mate? Is he sent through? There's a funny question there. Yeah, he's a great friend of mine, and he was a great athlete. He's probably right up there with the best all-round athlete that played in AFL, from speed to endurance to power to strength. Yeah, he pretty much had it all. And he definitely took ages to make it, and he definitely minded mindset to actually get there, which took literally an overseas trip to Tokyo, I think. Some game that he got in and he played well. I think something like that. I remember he was deciding whether to go to Yarrawonga to get $800 a week. It'd be interesting if I'm right there, or stay at Essendon. But he made the decision and earn $100 a week in the reserves and made it. But yeah, he was fantastic. Great athlete, great desire, great bloke. Yeah. Is it true that Michael PB to maximum? No, it's not true. No, it's funny.
But what is true, it's actually amazing, is that I never forget that night. It was Thursday night, and we did our last training session. And in those days, it was very social. The room upstairs was literally jam-packed with all the hangers-on and people having a feed and a drink. There's probably VB going on 2 days before. And Mick, in fact, actually, it's quite the opposite. I just remember it to this day. He didn't want to go up. He didn't want to talk to people. So he stayed with me in the gym, and he's a funny guy, hilarious, funny man. And I think he did every upper body exercise you could possibly do that night. Incline press, dumbbell curls, push downs. We just stayed in there for an hour, and it was like the opposite of what you'd think you should do 2 days before a grand final. And then he ran about 15 metres per second on the grand final day. But he had a good squat, yeah. He didn't want to do weights when he got there, but by the time that era occurred, he was a very, very good power cleaner, well over 100 kilos for reps, yeah.
Okay, we'll go last question before we wrap it up. But decal, Loris, tell me the time you outrun me, made me tweak my hip while I was meant to be the pro, and you were 55.
Oh my God, that's Dane Kelly. Yeah, well, Dane's an international tennis player. He's been ranked between 250 and 16,000 in his career. Yeah. I still help him a little bit online. So I started training Dane when he was 19. He's now 30. And yeah, until my hip exploded on me a couple of years ago, I used to like to take him on in some sprints. And yeah, classically one day at 55, I think we were sprinting and he did a quad, which made my day. I mean, that's pretty bad when you actually cause your athlete you're training to do a quad, but my ego was stroked. So I was pretty happy with that. So sorry, Dane, but Dane's a great endurance athlete. Actually, I always thought he'd make an elite midfielder in the AFL. He's a big guy, 90 kilo, and can pump out sub 3K, 1K, sub 3 minute. He's a good athlete. He's got a good hybrid, but he probably never endowed with pure power like I was. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. More aerobic. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for jumping on, mate. What are you excited about for 2021?
I think that I finished up with Shanghai. I'm working with Shanghai Institute of Sport, and a year and a half ago, about 14, 15 months ago, they transferred me to the team pursuit cycling, the four guys that go around. And I wasn't that interested, but I've become fascinated by it. It's probably the fastest improving sport in the world, the team pursuit. It's going to be huge if Tokyo goes ahead between Denmark, Australia, New Zealand and a few other countries. And the mix of physiology and science and training methods and data that's involved to improve team pursuit has really fascinated me. So I've got right into it last year and trying to help this team win the China Games in September this year, which is the big dance in every 4 years in China. And I think some of the guys. So I've become really interested in that. And then obviously I've got a few online clients around the world, just a little bit more in tennis than anything. And once I get back to Australia at some stage, I want to coach athletes still. So just keep improving and keep developing. Yeah.
Fantastic, mate. Well, yeah, it's been great to have you on and hear your story from the start to all the way through to all the AFL clubs and different sports around the world that you've been involved with and made a big impact. And yeah, I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure many others that have engaged in the chat and those that listen to the podcast in the future will as well. So thanks heaps for jumping on, mate. All the way over in China too.
Yeah, well, I think I'm the happiest that this thing worked. I'm a little bit worried about the whole thing being blocked, but thanks for having me. That was interesting, and good luck with everything. Thanks for having me on. It was a good chat. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Awesome, Loris. All the best preparation. All right. Hope you guys win.
I think there'll be a brown paper bag if we win there. Yeah.
Catch you, mate.
All right.
Guys, make sure if you enjoyed this episode to subscribe to our website. We've got over 1,000 footballers, so you can head over to preparelikeapro.com where you will receive a free strength and conditioning program and a free high performance presentation from our AFL experienced strength and conditioning coaches. If you want to work with one of our coaches and work with us one-on-one in person, if you're based in Melbourne or around the country, just email us at support@preparelikeapro.com. Thank you, guys.